Here's a little Adam Schefter on what he thinks about the 49ers.
Well, here's the thing. They play the AFC South, the NFC South, a last place schedule. They have strength of schedule wise or week of schedule wise, maybe the most favorable schedule in the National Football League. It is set up for the 49ers to win. The league believes in the 49ers. They've scheduled them on prime time 5 times, even after a 6-11 season. So the National Football League is saying the 49ers are going to be back after a 6-11 season. And they might be, Ty. But I'm just going to warn you, this is a team that has got a lot of holes right now. And we'll see how this all shakes out. But they got some holes to address, some needs to fill. And I don't know that this is going to be a 49ers team quite as good as teams we've seen in recent years. They've lost a lot of talent, but the league believes in them. The schedule is favorable, and we'll see how it shakes out.
There you go. A little bit of Schefter. So I guess the question is, and one that I'll throw to you, Chase, have the 49ers indeed lost a ton of talent, and we all should, come to grips that this is not nearly as good of a football team as, as maybe some of us think? Or have the 49ers really just lost guys that weren't all that great? And, the impact's going to be minimal. And they really don't have a lot of good players that have walked out the door. What's your perspective on that?
I think it's fair to say that this offseason, the 49ers have lost a lot of talent, but it was also their decision to let a lot of that talent walk. And a lot of the veteran players who they did decide to not re-sign were accomplished players with San Francisco, played at a very high level, but there were reasons why the Niners decided to not bring them back and retain them. Some of them a little bit older, some of them a little bit injury prone. As far as the talent definition, that's why Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, Charvarius Ward, Aaron Banks, and others got paid. It's because other teams looked at them as talented players. But does that necessarily mean that the Niners got that much drastically worse? I don't think so. The Niners go into 2025 as a very unproven team, but there are still a lot of really talented players on this roster. Brock Purdy at quarterback, Christian McCaffrey at running back, Trent Williams at left tackle, Dominic Pooney at right guard. When Brandon Ayuk comes back, he's an all-pro caliber wide receiver. George Kittle is the best all-around tight end in the game. I know Brock Bowers is threatening that title, but Brock Bowers can't block to the likes that George Kittle can. Ricky Pearsall has some juice. Demarcus Robinson is a really good number 3. The Niners think Jawan Jennings can potentially be a number 1 guy. On defense, they lost a lot of players, but the defensive line is anchored by Nick Bosa. He was the defensive player of the year a couple of years ago. They drafted 3 really intriguing rookies. They have the best off-ball linebacker in the game in Fred Warner. I like their corner situation with Diamador Lenore and Renardo Green with Upton Stout in the slot. And at that safety position, Jair Brown has to rebound. It really hurts them that Malik Mustafa had that ACL surgery because he was really good as a rookie, and I thought that he was in store for a breakout year 2. And now it could be Jason Pinnock. It could be Marcus Siegel, the rookie, starting there. But I think people have to change their thoughts on the Niners from they're not as talented to they might be more talented, more athletic, have some more juice. They're just a little bit more unproven. And they could start 5 guys on the defensive side of the ball, but who are rookies. But I think that they're going to be a better defensive unit because I think they're going to be a better coach team led by Robert Saleh, who's one of the top defensive minds in the game. And I love what he said a couple of weeks ago in his introductory press conference, the first time that we heard from him. He's willing to adapt. He's willing to evolve. He's willing to make changes. He's willing to be ahead of the curve and think creatively from a defensive sense. And so you might be younger defensively, but I think you're better. I think they improve on special teams because I like what Brant Boyer brings to the table. And I think that Kyle Shanahan's going to be able to improve. Now, you and I, we love trench play. We wish the Niners were a little bit better along the offensive line. It's just not what Kyle Shanahan values, unfortunately. He can scheme around it sometimes. The Niners are lucky that Brock Purdy is mobile. But I think this team, if they don't win double-digit games, I think it's a disaster. I think that they can reverse what they did last year when they went 6-11, and they can go 11-6 or better because of this easier schedule, better coaching. And I do think that they have the opportunity to not be as talented as teams that we've seen in recent memory that have made it to NFC Championship games and Super Bowls, but they could still be one of the top teams in the NFC.
You know, I'm going to push back on Schefter. If he were here, I would say, well, you're a sensible guy, Adam. Let's go through it, and let's see where there's been either noticeable upgrades or noticeable step backs. Defensive coordinator out is Nick Sorensen, in is Robert Saleh. I think that's a noticeable and significant and meaningful upgrade.
Yeah. Significant.
Special teams coach out is Brian Schneider, in is Brant Boyer. I don't know definitively, but my sense of it, Chase, is that that's an upgrade. That the Niners upgraded from their special teams coach of last year to their special teams coach this year. Now let's flip it over to the offensive side of the ball. At backup quarterback, last year you had Josh Dobbs and Brandon Allen. This year you have Mac Jones and I guess, some combination of Tanner Mordecai or Curtis Rourke. I kind of think that's a significant upgrade. I think Mac Jones, say whatever you want about what he's done the last couple of years, but he's better than the guys they have. I could argue at least that maybe the backfield is upgraded if you went from an unhealthy CMC to a healthy CMC, or if you went from an unhealthy CMC and JP Mason to a healthy CMC and you had Jordan James and Corey Kiner. So I think you might have upgraded there. Your blocking tight end last year was Saubert. You added Luke Farrell. I don't think that's a downgrade. I think that's probably maybe, let's just say, a lateral move. I won't say it's an upgrade. You had Jalen Moore as your swing tackle. Now you're either going to have some combination of Andre Dillard or Nicholas Petit-Frere, or we'll see. We'll talk about DJ Humphries here in a minute. That I don't necessarily see as a downgrade either. I'm not seeing the defensive line.
It's so much better.
The 49ers are going to put out there this year is significantly better.
Yeah.
Nick Martin is a major upgrade. Why? Because you're not upgrading him on Dre Greenlaw. Dre Greenlaw didn't play last year except for a little bit. You're upgrading him off Devondre Campbell. The question is Nick Martin better or worse than Devondre Campbell? Because that's who played. And yeah, Nick Martin, I think, is going to be better than Devondre Campbell. So, I think they've taken a couple steps back with the injury to Malik Mustafa. I think they took a step back when they got rid of Mooney Ward. I'll give you those two. But outside of, and I'll throw a third guy in there. I think they definitely took a step back when they lost Ayuk. It's not like they've gotten some receiver that's going to be better than Ayuk. This offseason cycle. So, there's a couple of spots where the Niners are not quite as good. Mooney, Ayuk, a couple spots. But there's probably 3 times as many spots where they've upgraded. So I don't know. Let me ask you this. What is the biggest loss? The biggest loss from last year that they're not going to have this year? What is it?
I think it's Dre Greenlaw, and I know that you mentioned that he didn't play, but when you think about the 49ers, you think about previously to last year, the best off-ball linebacking duo in the NFL that wreaked havoc, that injected fear into opponents, that was so effective in the pass game and against the run. And when Dre Greenlaw did play for a half against the Rams and a few snaps against the Dolphins, he made his impact be felt. He was all over the field in that first half against the Rams, making tackles left and right, and you just saw 57 flying around. And I think there's something to be said for the swagger, the football IQ, the confidence, the physicality, the speed combination that he brought to that side of the ball. But you're right. Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles and Devondre Campbell as off-ball linebackers. I'll take my shot with D. Winters, who had an 80 coverage grade, which was top 6 among off-ball linebackers in football last year. And Nick Martin, if he can stay healthy and he can show us flashes of what he did in 2023 out of Oklahoma State when he had more than 100 tackles, 16 TFLs, 6 sacks, I think that he can be a really good player in this league. And Charvarius Ward last year didn't play well, and obviously we know the circumstances behind that, and we don't factor in human nature enough. When you suffer a family strategy to the level and the severity of the family tragedy that he had to deal with mentally and physically, you're just not the same guy. But let's give some props to Renardo Green, and this isn't directed at you, Larry, but a lot of people don't realize how good Renardo Green was last year. And there's a big reason why Robert Saleh last week said he's one of the best players on our team. You know, he only started 7 games last year. He was 72nd in coverage snaps among corners, 222 of them. And he was 11th in pass breakups with 9. He was tied for 15th in passes defended with 13. And his coverage grade was 74.3, 28th among 222 corners. And so him and Diamador Lenore, I think they're a really good outside cornerback tandem. And I think Upton Stout in the slot can be a really, really good player. And what Renardo Green did at Florida State, he was a pass breakup machine. He ran pretty well, 4.4, 4.5 guy. He was very physical. His tape against Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas at Florida State translated to the NFL level. And so in name value, the Niners to the casual person might be worse because they've lost a lot of popular names. But I think by season's end, with them getting healthier and younger and being a better coach team with Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy rebounding with the existing core players on this team, who's to say that this Niners team can't be better? And they don't have to improve that much. They went 6-11 last year.
Yeah, you know, and you said it perfectly, too, because I remember an old football coach when I used to scout with the Cardinals and before that in the Canadian League. He said, you know, don't get caught up on names, boy. He's like, the names remain the same, but after a while, all you got is that name on the back of the jersey. Yeah. In other words, guys get old, man. Guys get old, and guys get old in football before your eyes. I mean, it happens so fast. Heck, I mean, think about it. You're a relatively young man. How many different careers have you seen go from start to finish just since you've been following it? And, you know, once you build up 20 years, 30 years of following it, it's like there's all kinds of guys who come and go. And, you know, it's just the nature of the beast. It's like you have a big name, and then all of a sudden you're a big name that nobody wants. I think football, more than almost any other sport, we see this. Guys come to the end, and we go like, whoa, that guy's done? And, like, even people around the league are like, whoa, that guy got cut? And then that guy who gets cut, who's got a big name, generally will get a couple other opportunities because people just don't believe. They're like, well, you know what? Maybe I'm not current, but I thought he was pretty good. Well, he was pretty good until he blew out his Achilles, tore his quad, you know, ripped out his this, tore his shoulder, and now he's just pretty average. And that's just kind of, you know, this sport is a brutal sport. So I personally think the 49ers are going to be pretty good. Now, the schedule came out yesterday. Before I ask you about what you think what kind of record you think the Niners are looking at, I did a stream last night with Dieter, and I played the cut from Cowherd. I won't play it again, but basically Cowherd is just, you know, he's a Seahawk fan masquerading as a national unbiased NFL observer, but he's a Seahawk fan.
He's from Washington, yeah.
And he's living in LA, so he loves the Rams, he loves the Seahawks. He's already come on record as saying the Niners are the worst team in the division and had the worst draft of anybody in the league. And then he does a video yesterday saying, but the schedule's so easy, it won't be a success if they win 10 games. So it's like, what is it? I've never seen a team in the history of the NFL finish last and win 10 games. But the way that Cowherd has this thing set up, if the Niners are dead last in their division, he's right. And if they win 10 games, he predicted it. So, I mean, it's like, where, it's like, he's like, well, Mahomes and Allen and, Josh Allen, another guy who hasn't been to the Super Bowl, they'd win 13, 14 games with this Niners schedule. No mention, no reference to the fact that the 49ers last year had the most brutal schedule known to man, and that their 6-11 record is a direct result, at least partly, of how difficult that schedule was. No mention of that. Just the mention of there'll be no excuses for Brock Purdy. Don't tell me he had a good year if he goes 10-6. Dude, you just told us they're the worst team in the division that had the worst draft, and now you're telling us if they win 10 games, it's a failure.
Yeah,
I'm so tired of that guy. I just can't even tell you. Beyond him, if you want to comment on him, great. If not, you want to pass that and just let it be my diatribe, that's fine. What'd you think of the schedule?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, for Cowherd, he's from Washington. He grew up a Seahawks fan. He said that publicly. He lives in LA now, as you mentioned. He's about to move to Chicago and take his show there, but he's also tight with Les Snead, and he knows, just like the NFL knows, which is why the Niners have 5 primetime games coming off a 6-11 season, that the Niners have brand power. And when you talk about big brands, people are going to tune in, whether it be live on FS1, whether it be live on the radio, whether it be on YouTube. The Niners drive ratings. The Niners demand hype and attention. And so
are you saying that you're not going to tell the people at Chat Sports, get me off of Niners Eagles, get me on Panthers Jags today? I want off of Niners Eagles, get me to Panthers Jags.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's part of the reason why.
What happened to Chase?
So much.
What happened to Chase Senior? What he I don't know. Does he exist anymore? I don't know.
He's like, covering the Jags, Panthers, and Cardinals now.
Right.
He's going for the smaller brands. No, look, I will say, like, if the Niners don't win double-digit games with this cakewalk schedule, I don't care if they start 5 rookies on the defensive side of the ball. I do think that will not look good on Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan. They should be able to win double-digit games.
Yes.
But here's the thing, too, going back to Schefter, there's a reason why the Niners are 6th in Super Bowl odds and why they're odds-on favorites to win the NFC West. Now, from our standpoint, we cover this team and talk about this team every single day. Them being listed as the 6th best Super Bowl odds, like, that's a little bit of a reach, I think. I don't know if they're going to win the division because I think the Rams are good, but I do think that they can bounce back after a 6-11 season. I don't think that they're going to miss the playoffs once again. I just don't envision a scenario in which that happens. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. As far as my thoughts on the schedule, look, easiest schedule in the NFL based upon Vegas forecasted win totals, based upon the combined winning percentage of their opponents. There are a lot of road games to start. You're on the road 6 of the first 9 weeks, but I think a lot of that travel is very doable. Last year, there was a -22 rest day disadvantage. And when you factor that in with the fact that the Niners going into last year had made it to 4 NFC championship games and 2 Super Bowls in 5 years, meaning they've gone deep into the calendar year. They've had shorter off seasons. They've had crunched off seasons with less time to recover. That all led to the Niners not being able to stay healthy at all last year, and they looked, played, and coached like a tired, worn-out team. And so I think this year they're younger, they're more athletic, there's some youth juice on this team, and I think that Kyle Shanahan, we've seen it in his face with how he looks, with what he said. He even said it, I'm the most energized that I've been in a little while. You see it with Robert Saleh coming back to the Niners. Like, this is an organization that's kind of fueling themselves once again. They're feeling good. They're really excited. And I think that translates to, again, a better coach team, a roster that's going to be really fun to watch because of the young player developmental stories that we're going to be able to see. The schedule is a lot easier. I think that's a breath of fresh air, and it allows the Niners to relax a little bit. And I think it results in what is going to be a very fun and successful 2025 season where the Niners are going to be in the hunt in the NFC.
My 14-year-old is, I always joke with him. I'm like, you're more negative than me, because he'll be like, we were going through the Niners schedule, and every game that was even remotely close, loss. And I'm like, I go, really? They're going to lose every one of these games? And he's like, well, So we went through it, and he was super negative and giving them losses like with he had them getting swept by the Rams, losing to Tampa, losing to Houston, losing to who else was it? Somebody else. But he had him at 11-6. We had 11-6.
That's what I'm going with. I'm going with 11-6, and some people are like, that's disrespectful. You don't have them winning 13 or 14 games. It's like, hold on. They went 6-11 last year. That is a 5-win improvement year over year. You would take that because you're a bona fide playoff team too, with the shot to raise the Lombardi Trophy at your crib at Levi Stadium, the site of Super Bowl 60.
I mean, they could. It's the kind of schedule where if the Niners did, for whatever reason, have a little bit more juice on both sides of the ball than we know today, like let's just say they show up and all of a sudden Ricky Pearsall is like, Cooper Kupp in his prime or something. Yeah. Or, you show up and suddenly Brock Purdy's noticeably better. Or this defensive line is with Mikael Williams opposite Bosa is really wrecking shop and setting the tone up front. Or Nick Martin is playing like an all-pro player. Or, there are things that could happen that would make the Niners play at a higher level than maybe we anticipate. If they play at that higher level, looking at the schedule they have in front of them, there's potential for running the table. Yeah. I mean, if you wanted to say it that way, but there's also, you got to be realistic. I think if there's one game that I'm looking at going, that one I think looks easier on paper today than it's going to look in October is the Falcons game. I really believe in Michael Penix, and I think this is the year for Michael Penix to bust out. He got a little bit of a taste of it last year, but I think this is the year that we firmly know that last year was about Penix or Daniels or Penix. And I think Penix has a monster year, and I think the Falcons are one of the bust-out teams. So I like the Falcons to be a tougher team. I'm not saying that they're going to beat the Niners October 19th, but I do think the Falcons with Penix this year are going to be really good. Is there any team on their schedule that you think might be better than what maybe the masses think? It's a pretty bleak group, to be honest.
With Atlanta, Bijan Robinson is a stud. Can Kyle Pitts finally put it together? Drake London is a really good player. Tyler Algier is good. Their offensive line has been pretty solid, even though they lost Drew Dahlman. The thing with Atlanta, though, they were last in sack percentage and sacks last year, and one of the worst overall defenses in the NFL as far as points per game goes. And so they have to come to Santa Clara to play the Niners. I like San Francisco in that game, regardless of the leap that Michael Penix can take. The other game that I look at is the Cleveland game. Kyle Shanahan's like, 1-8 all time against Jim Schwartz? He has not been able to solve Jim Schwartz's defense. And so you go to Cleveland. I think that's around week 13, week 14. It could be inclement weather. That could lead to Brock Purdy having trouble gripping the football. He's not great in some of these cold weather, wet games. So that's a game I think could give the Niners trouble. And then both of the Rams games are ones that I look at where I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners got swept by the Rams. Both of those games were close last year. You can make the argument that the Niners should have won both. But I think the Rams have improved. Devontae Adams is an upgrade over Cooper Kupp. That defense is now another year older after they really came on at the end of last year. And I think the Rams are going to be one of the players to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. But outside of that, the Niners have every realistic chance to win all of the games on their schedule. Going to Tampa Bay will be hard, but you're coming off a mini bye week, playing the Seattle Seahawks. That can be a problem. I don't worry about it as much in week 1 because they've had so much turnover. The Arizona Cardinals, I think, are going to be improved, and they could give the Niners trouble. They have in recent years. The Chicago Bears are going to be one of the more intriguing teams in the NFL. You get that game at home, though. And so this schedule is really set up for the Niners to be a really good team record-wise this year. And the thing is, too, some people might say they're not going to be tested until the NFL playoffs. There's a lot of tests on this schedule. There's still a lot of really good opponents. The thing is, too, when you have an easier schedule and you get to the playoffs, you're healthier potentially. You're feeling more refreshed. You're not as beat up. And all you have to do is play your best football in that game. And if you do that with this talented team, with a top-notch coaching staff, you have to like the Niners' chances.